She found her mother's camera in the attic. The film was 30 years old, still working. But the photos it developed showed moments she'd erased, and one truth she'd been running from her whole life. Have you ever buried a memory so deep you forgot it was real? The key sits cold in her palm. Leor stands at the edge of the driveway, staring at the house she hasn't entered in 3 weeks. Muirwood looks smaller than she remembers. Paint peeling at the corners, shutters hanging crooked. The garden overtaken by weeds that climb the porch rails, like they're trying to reclaim the wood. The air smells like rain that hasn't fallen yet, thick and waiting. She tells herself she's here because the executor called twice yesterday, because there are documents to sign, belongings to sort, a life to pack into boxes and donate to strangers. She tells herself it's practical, but her hand shakes as she fits the key into the lock. The door opens with a groan. Wood swollen from humidity, hinges rusted from disuse. Inside, the air is stale and thick, layered with dust and the faint ghost of her mother's perfume. Vesa always wore something floral, something soft. Leor catches it now, just barely, beneath the smell of old wood and mothballs, and her throat tightens. She steps inside and closes the door behind her. The hallway stretches ahead, darker than she expected. Light filters weakly through yellowed curtains, catching on dust motes that drift through the air like tiny suspended worlds. Everything is exactly as Vesa left it. Coat still hanging by the door, shoes lined up beneath the bench, a coffee mug on the side table with a ring of dried residue at the bottom. Leor doesn't touch anything. She moves through the house like a stranger, avoiding the living room where Vesa's reading chair still holds the impression of her body, skirting the kitchen where her mother's handwriting covers the calendar on the wall. Dr. Tuesday, garden club, Friday, appointments Vesa never made it to. Leor climbs the stairs, her footsteps creaking on wood that remembers her weight. At the end of the hallway, the attic door waits. Narrow, painted white, handle tarnished with age. She hasn't been up there in years, maybe decades. The doorknob is cold beneath her palm, gritty. She twists it and pulls, and the door resists before giving way with a scrape of wood on wood. The attic stairs are steep and dim, lit only by a single bulb that flickers when she pulls the chain. The air up here is different, thicker, older, like it's been holding its breath. Dust coats everything, the floorboards, the rafters, the towers of cardboard boxes stacked against the walls. Some are labeled in Vesa's careful handwriting. Liar, childhood, holiday decorations, Oren's tools. Liar kneels beside the nearest box and opens it. Inside, a stuffed rabbit with one missing ear, a stack of crayon drawings on construction paper, a music box that plays the first few notes of a lullaby before the mechanism jams. She sets it aside and opens another. And another. Hours pass. Or maybe just minutes. Time feels strange up here, suspended like the dust motes that refuse to settle. And then she sees it. A wooden chest in the corner, half hidden beneath a sheet that's gone gray with age. Liar pulls the sheet away, and dust billows into the air, catching in her throat. The chest is small, made of dark wood, with brass hinges that have oxidized green. No lock, just a latch. She opens it. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, a camera. It's old, older than Leor, maybe older than Vesa. A Polaroid, boxy and heavy, the kind that spits out photos with a mechanical whir. The plastic casing is scuffed, the viewfinder scratched, but when Leor lifts it, something in her chest pulls tight. Her hands are shaking. She doesn't know why. It's just a camera, just an object her mother kept, tucked away and forgotten like everything else in this attic. But her fingers tremble as she turns it over, checking the film counter. 7 exposures left. Liar's breath catches. The film is decades old, 30 years, maybe more. It shouldn't work anymore. Film degrades. Chemistry fails. But the counter blinks green, insistent, alive. She raises the camera to her eye, points it at the far wall where a stack of boxes leans precariously toward collapse. Her finger finds the shutter button. Click. The sound is sharper than she expected, mechanical and final. The camera whirs and a photo slides out. Smooth square, still warm from the chemicals inside. Layer holds it up to the light. It's blank. White, featureless, empty. No image, no shadows. Just the soft chemical smell of developing fluid and the faint texture of the paper beneath her thumb. She exhales. Of course it's blank. The film is ancient. Whatever magic once lived inside this camera died decades ago, buried here in the attic with everything else Vesa couldn't bear to look at. Layor sets the photo on the windowsill, a small square patch of nothing, and places the camera back in the chest. She'll deal with it later, or maybe she won't. Maybe she'll leave it here, let the next owner of this house find it and wonder. She stands, brushing dust from her knees, and moves toward the stairs. But at the threshold she pauses, glances back. The photo sits where she left it, propped against the glass. And in the corner, just the edge, just a smudge, something faint is beginning to appear, a blur of color, a shape she can't quite name. Layor stares at it, pulse quickening, then forces herself to look away. It's just light, she tells herself, just a trick of the sun through dirty glass. She pulls the attic door shut behind her and descends into the house below, where the air is thinner and the silence doesn't press quite so hard. Behind her, in the attic, the photo continues to develop. Slowly, impossibly, alone. 2 days pass in careful, deliberate motion. Layor sorts the house room by room, methodical as surgery. She divides Vesa's belongings into 3 piles: keep, donate, trash. The categories are clean, binary. They give her something to control when everything else feels like it's slipping through her fingers. She starts in the kitchen. Vesa's coffee mugs line the cabinet. Mismatched, chipped, each one a souvenir from some half-forgotten trip. Layor wraps them in newspaper, her hands moving automatically, and places them in a donation box. The kettle sits on the stove, its whistle silent now, a thin layer of dust coating the spout. She wipes it clean with a damp cloth, sets it aside. Keep. The house creaks around her as she works. Floorboards settling, pipes expanding in the walls. Or maybe it's just the rain. Steady, insistent, drumming against the roof like it's been waiting for permission to fall. Layor doesn't mind the rain. It fills the silence. She moves to the living room next. Vesa's books are stacked on every surface. Novels with broken spines. Poetry collections with passages underlined in fading ink. Layor opens one at random and finds her mother's handwriting in the margins. Remember this feeling. She closes the book quickly, places it in the donate pile before she can read any more. But her hands linger on the cover, just for a moment. Just long enough to feel the worn cloth beneath her thumb. She pulls away and keeps sorting. By the second afternoon, the rain hasn't stopped. It blurs the windows, turns the world outside into something soft and indistinct. Layor makes tea she doesn't drink, letting the mug go cold on the kitchen table while she stands at the window, staring at nothing. The radio hums in the corner. Old analog, the kind with a dial that crackles with static when you turn it. Vesa used to leave it on all day, tuned to the classical station. Layor switches it off. The silence that follows feels heavier than the sound. She's avoiding the attic. She knows she is. There are boxes up there, labeled, waiting, full of things she'll have to sort eventually. But every time she thinks about climbing those stairs, her chest tightens, and she finds something else that needs doing. Dishes to wash, carpets to vacuum, a drawer full of takeout menus and expired coupons that need throwing away. It's while sorting through Vessa's desk that she finds it. A photograph, small, square, glossy, tucked between the pages of an old address book. Liar pulls it free and freezes. It's a school photo, the kind they used to take every fall, lining up the kids in rows on metal bleachers, telling them to smile. She recognizes herself immediately. 10 years old, gap-toothed, hair pulled into 2 uneven braids, and beside her, grinning wide enough to show his missing canine, Kyle. The memory hits like a wave. Summer, the lake. Kyle daring her to jump off the pier, laughing when she hesitated, calling her a coward until she finally did it, shrieking as the cold water closed over her head. Surfacing to find him doubled over, laughing so hard he couldn't breathe. "Promise me something," he'd said later, sitting on the dock with their feet dangling in the water. "Promise we'll always be like this." She'd promised. Lior sets the photo down, her hand trembling. She hasn't thought about Kale in years, hasn't let herself. The memory is too sharp, too close to something she can't afford to touch. She presses her palms flat against the table, breathing slowly, waiting for the tightness in her chest to ease. It doesn't. She stands abruptly, leaving the photo where it is, and climbs the stairs. The attic door is still closed, still waiting. She opens it without thinking this time, pulls the chain to turn on the light, and ascends into the dusty stillness. The boxes are where she left them. The chest is still open, the camera resting inside like it's been sleeping. And on the windowsill, Lior stops, the photo. It's not blank anymore. She crosses the attic in 3 quick steps, her pulse loud in her ears. The photo sits where she placed it 2 days ago, propped against the glass. But now, there's something in it. A shape. Blurred, indistinct, but undeniably there. A figure. Lior picks it up, holding it close to the light. The image is faint, still developing, like ink bleeding slowly through wet paper. But she can make out the outline. Small, child-sized, standing in what looks like a backyard. Her backyard. The film is 30 years old. The chemistry should be dead. Polaroids don't develop over days. They develop in minutes. Or not at all. This shouldn't be possible. Liar's hands shake as she turns the photo over, searching for... what? An explanation? A signature? There's nothing. Just the white backing, smooth and featureless. She tells herself it's a fluke, a chemical anomaly, old film reacting strangely to light and temperature. She tells herself there's a rational explanation, something scientific, something that doesn't require her to believe in things that can't be real. But her hands won't stop shaking. She pockets the photo, shoving it deep into her jeans, and leaves the attic without looking back. That night, the rain finally stops. Lior lies in Vessa's bed. Her own childhood room felt too small, too full of ghosts, and stares at the ceiling. The house is silent now. No rain, no creaking, just the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs and the sound of her own breathing. She closes her eyes and dreams. In the dream, Vessa is standing in the attic, younger than Lior remembers. Her hair still dark, her face unlined. She's holding the camera, turning it over in her hands like she's trying to understand it, like it's a puzzle she can't solve. Vessa looks up, sees Lior standing in the doorway. "Some things don't stay buried," Vessa says. Her voice is soft, sad, even when we want them to. Lior tries to speak, but no sound comes out. Vessa raises the camera, points it at her. Click. Lior wakes gasping, heart hammering against her ribs. The room is dark. The clock on the nightstand reads 3:47. She lies still, waiting for her pulse to slow, telling herself it was just a dream. Just her mind processing stress, grief, the strangeness of being back in this house. Then she sees it. The photo. It's on the nightstand, right beside the clock. She didn't put it there. She left it in her jeans pocket, crumpled at the foot of the bed. Lior reaches for it with trembling fingers and holds it up to the faint light filtering through the curtains. The figure is clearer now. A child, standing in the backyard, small, blurred, but unmistakable. And in the shape of the hair, the tilt of the head, Lior sees something that makes her stomach drop. It looks like her. Lior doesn't sleep again that night. She sits on the edge of the bed, holding the photo under the lamp, studying every detail. The child in the image is clearer now. Standing in the backyard, near the garden fence, wearing a dress Lior recognizes. Yellow cotton with white flowers. She had one just like it when she was 9 years old. She was 9 years old in this photo, but she has no memory of this moment. No memory of standing in that exact spot, or who might have taken the picture, or why. The rain has stopped. Through the window, the sky is beginning to lighten. Not quite dawn, but close. Pale gray bleeding into softer blue. Lior sets the photo on the nightstand and stands, her body stiff from hours of sitting. She needs to know. The attic is cold in the early morning light. The air smells like dust and old paper, and when Lior pulls the chain to turn on the bulb, it flickers twice before holding steady. The camera sits in the chest where she left it, waiting. Lior picks it up, feeling the weight of it in her hands. The film counter still reads 6 exposures remaining. She turns it over, checking for markings, inscriptions, anything that might explain what it is or how it works. There's nothing. Just scuffed plastic and scratched metal, ordinary in every way except for what it does. She raises it to her eye, points it at the empty hallway. Just beyond the attic door, her finger hovers over the shutter button. Her pulse is loud in her ears. She knows this is irrational. Knows that cameras don't pull images from the past, that film doesn't develop on its own, that none of this should be possible. But she presses the button anyway. Click. The photo ejects, smooth and warm, and Lior catches it before it can fall. She holds it up to the light, watching the blank surface, waiting for something, anything, to appear. Nothing. She carries it downstairs, sets it on the kitchen table, and makes coffee she doesn't drink. The house is silent around her. No creaking, no rain. Just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the sound of her own breathing. She sits, waits. An hour passes, then 2. And then slowly, impossibly, the image begins to emerge. It's faint at first, just a smudge of color in the center of the frame. But as the minutes pass, it sharpens, takes shape, becomes something she can recognize, the hallway, but not as it is now, as it was. The wallpaper is different, patterned, floral, something Vesa must have replaced years ago. The floor is polished wood, not the scuffed planks Lior walked across this morning. And standing in the center of the frame, bathed in soft afternoon light, Vesa, younger, so much younger. Her hair dark and unstyled, her face unlined, her body curved with late pregnancy. She's smiling at something beyond the camera's view, one hand resting on her belly, the other holding a mug. Lior's hand trembles as she picks up the photo. This isn't the present. This is decades ago, before Lior was born, or maybe when she was just an infant, too small to remember. The camera doesn't capture what's in front of it. It captures what was. Lior moves through the house like she's searching for something she can't name. She opens drawers, rifles through closets, checks shelves and cabinets, and boxes she sorted just yesterday. She's looking for answers, for context, for anything that might explain what Vesa knew about this camera and why she kept it hidden. She finds it in Vesa's bedroom. The nightstand has a drawer that sticks when she pulls it. Wood swollen from humidity, the track warped with age. Liar yanks harder, and it finally gives, sliding open with a sharp scrape. Inside, a small brass key. Liar turns it over in her palm, then looks around the room. The dresser, the closet, the vanity by the window. There, at the bottom of the vanity, half hidden beneath a stack of folded scarves, a locked drawer. Lear kneels on the floor, fitting the key into the lock. It turns smoothly, and the drawer slides open. Inside she finds letters. Dozens of them, bound with string, addressed to Vesa in her father's handwriting. Oren's letters. Lear had thought he left when she was young. Just walked out one day and never came back. But these letters suggest something different. Something messier. I wish I could make you understand. I wish I could stay. A journal. Leather-bound, pages yellowed with age, filled with Vesa's careful script. And 6 rolls of undeveloped film, still sealed in their foil wrappers. Liar spreads everything across the floor. Letters, journal, film canisters. And begins to read. Most of the journal entries are mundane. Grocery lists, appointment reminders. Notes about Lior's school projects and childhood milestones. But then, near the middle, Lior finds an entry that makes her stop. I found the camera in the attic today. I don't know where it came from. Oren says it was his grandmother's, but he won't talk about it. Won't even look at it. He says some things are better left alone. But I can't leave it alone. I took a photo this morning. Just one. And when it developed, I saw her, Oren's mother, standing in the garden. But she's been dead for 7 years. Some moments refuse to stay buried. Maybe they're not. Supposed to. Lior sets the journal down, her hands shaking. Vesa knew. She knew what the camera did. Knew it pulled the past into the present, layer by layer, image by impossible image. And she kept it anyway. Hid it. Protected it. Why? Lior looks at the camera, still sitting on the floor beside her. 5 exposures left. She knows what she has to do. The mirror in the hallway is old, the glass slightly warped, the frame tarnished with age. Lior stands in front of it, holding the camera at chest height, and stares at her own reflection. She looks tired, hollow, like she's been holding her breath for 30 years and only just now realized she's suffocating. She raises the camera, points it at the mirror, at herself. Her finger trembles on the shutter button. Click. The photo ejects and Lior catches it, holding it carefully by the edges. It's blank. White. Featureless. She carries it to the kitchen table and sets it beside the others. Then she sits, waits. Outside, the sun breaks through the clouds, for the first time in days, spilling light across the kitchen floor. It should feel like hope, like relief. But all Lior feels is dread, because she knows, somewhere deep in the part of her that's been running for decades, that this photo will show her something she's spent her entire life trying not to see. She watches the blank surface and waits for the past to rise. The photo takes 4 hours to develop. Lior sits at the kitchen table watching it, waiting. The sunlight moves across the floor, slow and golden, and she doesn't move with it. She just watches the blank square of paper, willing it to stay empty, knowing it won't. At first, it's just a shadow, a smudge in the center of the frame, then edges, lines, the suggestion of shapes, and then, all at once, the image sharpens. Lior's breath stops. The photo shows a pier, wooden planks bleached gray by sun and water, stretching out over a lake so blue it looks unreal. And on the pier, 2 children. One is laughing, mid-leap, arms spread wide like he's trying to fly. His hair is dark, his face split by a grin so wide it looks like it might crack him open. He's wearing swim trunks and nothing else, his skin brown from summer sun. Kyle. The other child stands at the edge of the frame, turned slightly away. 10 years old. Braids uneven. Yellow dress with white flowers. And in her hands, the camera. Layor drops the photo. It flutters to the table, face up, and she stares at it like it's something venomous, something that might bite if she gets too close. She was there. She was there, and she spent 30 years telling herself she wasn't. The memory comes back in fragments, sharp, unforgiving. Summer, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer. She and Cale riding their bikes to Mirror Lake, cutting through the back trails where the pine trees grow so thick the ground stays cool even in August. They'd left their bikes at the edge of the parking lot and walked down to the pier, feet bare, towels slung over their shoulders. Vesa had dropped her off that morning with a packed lunch and instructions to be home by 5. Kyle's parents thought he was at baseball practice. They had the whole afternoon. "Look what I found," Layor had said, pulling the camera from her backpack. She'd found it in Vesa's car the night before, tucked under the passenger seat. Old, strange, the kind of thing adults kept but never used. Kyle's eyes had lit up. "Does it work?" "I don't know. It has film. Take my picture," he'd said, grinning. "Take it when I jump." She'd laughed. "You're going to look stupid." "I always look stupid. Come on." So she'd raised the camera, pointed it at him as he climbed onto the pier railing, balancing like a tightrope walker, arms out for balance. "Ready?" he'd called. "Ready." He jumped and slipped. Layor closes her eyes, but the memory doesn't stop. His foot catching on the edge of the railing, his body twisting midair. Wrong. Too fast. The sound of his head hitting the pier. Not loud, just a dull, wet crack that didn't sound like it should mean anything. The splash, the water closing over him, and then the silence. She'd stood there, frozen, the camera still in her hands. Stood there while the water turned red. Stood there while someone screamed. Maybe her, maybe someone else on the beach. Stood there while adults ran past her, diving in, pulling Coyle's body to shore. Stood there until Vesa arrived, breathless and terrified, and pulled her away. Layor opens her eyes. Her hands are shaking so badly, she has to press them flat against the table to make them stop. Her chest is tight. Her throat aches. She feels like she's drowning in air. She told everyone she wasn't there. Told the police. Told Kyle's parents. Told herself. "I stayed home that day. I wasn't feeling well. I didn't go to the lake." And Vesa had confirmed it. Had looked the officer in the eye and said, yes, she was home with me all afternoon. Layor had believed her own lie for so long that it became the truth. The memory buried so deep she convinced herself it never happened. But Vesa knew. Vesa had known the whole time. Layor picks up the photo again, her fingers trembling. She stares at the image of herself, 10 years old, holding the camera, turned away from Cale's jump. She looks so small, so unbearably small. And she understands now why Vesa kept the camera, why she hid it in the attic, locked away with letters and journals and rolls of undeveloped film. Not to forget. To remember. To keep a record of the truth, even when the truth was too heavy to speak aloud. The camera was a witness. Silent, patient, waiting for the day someone would finally look. Layor's vision blurs. She realizes distantly that she's crying. Not the careful, controlled tears she allowed herself at the funeral. These are ugly, wrenching sobs that shake her whole body, pulling sounds from her throat she didn't know she could make. She doubles over, forehead pressed to the table, arms wrapped around herself like she's trying to hold her body together. I was there. I was there. I was there. The words loop in her mind, relentless, inescapable. I clicked the shutter. I watched him fall. I did nothing. No, that's not right. She was 10 years old, a child, frozen in shock and terror, unable to process what was happening until it was already over. But the guilt doesn't care about logic. It never has. Time passes. Lior doesn't know how much. Eventually, the crying stops. Her body runs out of tears, or energy, or both. She sits up slowly, wiping her face with the heel of her hand, and looks at the photo again. Kale mid-jump, grinning, alive at the last moment before everything changed. She picks up the journal, flipping back to the entry she read earlier. Vessa's handwriting, careful and deliberate. Some moments refuse to stay buried. Maybe they're not supposed to. Lior sets the journal down and looks at the camera, still sitting on the counter where she left it. 3 exposures left. She understands now. The camera isn't punishing her. It's not cruel. It's just honest. It shows what was, without judgment, without mercy. It shows the whole story, not the version she told herself, but the version that actually happened. And maybe that's what she needs, not to forget, not to bury it deeper, but to finally see it, all of it. The truth she's been running from for 30 years. Lior stands, her legs unsteady, and walks to the counter. She picks up the camera. Her hands still tremble, but she doesn't put it down. She places the 3rd photo, Kyle on the pier, herself holding the camera. Beside the other 2, a row of impossible images. A timeline of buried truth. 3 exposures left. She knows what comes next. She has to keep going. Lior doesn't leave the house for 2 days. She moves through the rooms like a ghost, touching things without seeing them, opening drawers she's already searched, reading the same journal entries over and over until the words stop making sense. The 3 photos sit on the kitchen table in a neat row, a child in the backyard, Vessa, pregnant, in the hallway, Kyle and Lior on the pier. 3 impossible moments. 3 truths she'd buried so deep she'd forgotten they were there. But the camera isn't finished. On the 3rd morning, Lior wakes to gray light filtering through the curtains and the sound of wind against the windows. The house is cold. She pulls on a sweater and walks downstairs, her feet bare on the wooden floor, and stops in the doorway of the living room. Vessa's chair sits by the window, empty, waiting. Lior crosses the room slowly, her hand trailing along the back of the sofa, and stands in front of the chair. The fabric is worn smooth where Vessa's hands used to rest. The cushion still holds the faint impression of her body. Lior picks up the camera from the side table where she left it. Her hands are shaking again. They haven't stopped. Not really. Not since the photo of Kale. But she raises the camera anyway, points it at the empty chair, and clicks the shutter. The photo ejects. Warm. Blank. She carries it to the kitchen and sets it on the table beside the others. Then she sits and waits. It takes 3 hours this time. Lior watches the photo develop in stages. First, the suggestion of a room, then furniture, then light, soft, diffused, coming from somewhere beyond the frame, and then Vessa. But not the Vessa Lior remembers. Not the mother who raised her, who packed her lunches and drove her to school and sat beside her at Kyle's funeral, silent and steady and impossibly strong. This Vessa is younger, smaller. Her hair is longer, darker, pulled back in a loose braid. She's wearing a hospital gown, the kind that ties at the back and leaves you feeling exposed. And she's sitting on the edge of a bed, holding someone's hand, Oren's hand. Lior's father, decades younger, his face tight with something Lior can't name. Grief, fear, both. And Vessa's face. Lior's chest tightens. Vessa's face is wrecked. That's the only word for it. Eyes red and swollen, mouth twisted with pain, her whole body curved inward like she's trying to protect something that's already gone. Liar picks up the journal with trembling fingers and flips backward through the pages. Past the entry about the camera, past the mundane lists and reminders. Further back, to the years before Cale died. And there, dated 5 years before that summer at Mirror Lake, she finds it. 19 weeks. They said it was a boy. I was going to name him Samuel. Sammy. Oren held my hand the whole time. He didn't say anything. What is there to say? I can't tell Lior. She's only 5. She wouldn't understand. And I don't want her to carry this. Don't want her to know that sometimes love isn't enough. That sometimes you lose things you never even got to hold. Maybe that's selfish. Maybe I'm protecting myself more than her, but I can't. I can't tell her. Lior sets the journal down. Her hands are shaking so badly the paper slips from her fingers and falls to the floor. She doesn't pick it up. Vesa had been pregnant, had carried a child for 19 weeks, had lost him, and Lior had never known. All those years, all that time, Vesa had been carrying this unbearable thing, and she'd done it alone. Just like Lior had carried Kyle's death alone. Both of them holding their grief so carefully, so quietly, so terrified of breaking under the weight. Both of them protecting each other by burying the truth. Lior closes her eyes. She sees Vesa standing in the kitchen, making breakfast. Vesa driving her to school. Vesa sitting at the funeral, her face calm and composed, while Lior sat beside her, numb and silent. How much strength had that taken? How much had Vesa been holding back? Even then, I'm so sorry, Mom. Lior whispers to the empty room. Her voice cracks. I didn't know you were holding so much. The tears come again, but this time she doesn't try to stop them, doesn't wipe her face or turn away or press her palms to her eyes until the pressure forces them back. She just cries, body shaking, face uncovered, salt on her lips and the metallic taste of fear in her mouth. She cries for Kyle, for Vesa, for herself, for all the years they spent protecting each other from the very thing they needed most, to be seen, to be known, to not carry their grief alone. The crying stops eventually. It always does. Lior sits at the table, exhausted, her face swollen and her chest aching. The 4 photos are lined up in front of her now, a timeline of buried truth. She picks up the photo of Vesa in the hospital and holds it carefully, like it might break. The camera isn't punishing her. It never was. It's giving her the full story, not just the trauma, not just the moments she'd rather forget, but everything. The love and the loss, the strength and the fear, the whole messy, unbearable truth of what it means to be human. Maybe forgiveness isn't about saying the right words. Maybe it's about finally seeing the whole picture, even the parts that hurt. If you've ever carried a memory you thought would break you, I hope you know you're not alone. Subscribe. Because some stories we need to finish together. Lior sets the photo down and looks at the camera. 2 exposures left. She knows what comes next. She's known since the first photo started developing. Since the moment she realized the camera wasn't showing her the present, but the past. It's going to show her herself, the version of herself she's been running from. The 10-year-old girl standing on the pier, frozen in shock, unable to move or speak or do anything but watch. And then, what? Lior doesn't know, but she picks up the camera anyway. The attic is dim in the late afternoon light. Dust motes drift through the air, suspended, timeless. The window at the far end is small and grimy, the glass streaked with years of dirt and rain. Lior stands in front of it, holding the camera. Her reflection stares back at her from the dusty glass, like a tired, hollow, but not numb anymore, not empty. She raises the camera, points it at her own reflection. Her finger hovers over the shutter button. She hesitates, then clicks. The photo ejects, smooth and warm, and Leor catches it. She doesn't look at it. Not yet. She's not ready. She carries it downstairs, back to the kitchen, and sets it beside the others. 5 photos. 5 impossible moments. And 1 more left. She sits and waits for the past to rise. Leor doesn't look at the 5th photo for hours. It sits on the kitchen table with the others, face down, while she moves through the house in slow circles. She makes tea that goes cold. She stands at the window watching the light fade. She picks up Vessa's journal and sets it down without opening it. She's afraid. Not of what the photo will show. She already knows what it will show. She's afraid of what she'll feel when she sees it. Afraid that even after everything, after all the tears and the memories and the truth finally dragged into light, she still won't be able to forgive herself. Afraid that some wounds don't heal. They just learn to live inside you. Sunset comes slowly. The sky bleeds orange and pink through the kitchen window, painting the walls in soft, fading light. Birds call to each other outside, distant, mournful, settling into trees for the night. Leor sits at the table. She picks up the 5th photo and turns it over. The image is clear, sharp, no blur, no ambiguity. It shows the pier at Mirror Lake, the same pier from the 3rd photo, the one where Kyle jumped and fell and didn't come back up. But this time Kyle isn't in the frame. It's just Leor, 10 years old, sitting at the very edge of the pier, feet dangling over the water. Her yellow dress is soaked through, clinging to her small frame. Her hair hangs in wet tangles around her face. And her expression. Leor's breath catches. The child in the photo looks empty. Not crying, not screaming, just blank. Frozen. Like someone pulled everything out of her and forgot to put it back. Leor stares at the image, her thumb tracing the edge of the photo paper. She remembers this moment now, remembers sitting there for hours after the ambulance left, after Kale's body was taken away, after the adults tried to pull her to her feet, and she wouldn't move, couldn't move, just sat there staring at the water, like if she looked long enough, she could rewind time. No one else is in the frame. No Vessa. No strangers. No lifeguards or police or grieving parents. Just a child, alone with a trauma too big for her body to hold. Leor sets the photo down carefully, her hands trembling. And she sees her, really sees her. Not the version she's been carrying in her head for 30 years. The version that was careless, that caused the accident, that should have done something differently. Not the version weighted down with guilt and shame and the crushing certainty that she was responsible for Kale's death. She sees a 10-year-old girl, small, fragile, terrified. A child who didn't cause anything, who witnessed something unbearable and survived it the only way she knew how, by pretending it never happened. Leor's vision blurs. "I'm so sorry," she whispers. Her voice cracks, but she keeps going. "I'm so sorry I left you there. I'm so sorry I made you carry this alone." The words pour out of her, unsteady and raw. "You were so small. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just a kid. You were just—" She can't finish. The sobs come again. Deep, wrenching, tearing something loose inside her chest that's been stuck there for decades. But this time it doesn't feel like drowning. It feels like breaking open. Like something that's been sealed too tight, finally cracking wide enough to let air in. "I see you now," Leor says through the tears. "I see you. I'm here." She picks up the photo with shaking hands and presses it to her chest. Holds it there like she's holding that 10-year-old girl. Like she can reach back through time and wrap her arms around her and tell her it's going to be okay. That she's going to survive this. That one day, 30 years from now, she's going to sit in her mother's kitchen and finally, let herself grieve. Lior kneels on the floor, still clutching the photo, and lets herself cry until there's nothing left. When the tears stop, the light has changed. The sunset has faded to dusk, and the kitchen is filled with soft blue shadow. Lior sits on the floor, her back against the cabinets, the photo still pressed to her chest. She feels lighter, hollowed out, but not in a bad way, like something heavy has been lifted, and she's still getting used to the absence of the weight. She looks at the photo again. The child on the pier stares back at her, blank and small and impossibly young. "You didn't deserve this," Lior says quietly. "None of it." And for the first time in 30 years, she believes it. She stands slowly, her legs stiff, and walks to the table where the camera sits. One exposure left. Lior picks it up, feeling the familiar weight in her hands. She understands now why Vesa kept it, why she hid it in the attic with the letters and the journal and the rolls of undeveloped film, not to trap the past, but to finish developing it, to let memory become complete, not perfect, not painless, but whole. Because that's what grief is, isn't it? Not a single photograph, not one frozen moment of pain, but the whole roll of film, light and shadow, joy and loss, the moment before and the moment after. The camera didn't show her these images to punish her. It showed them so she could finally see the full story, so she could stop running from the parts that hurt and start living with all of it. The beautiful and the unbearable, woven together, inseparable. Lior sets the camera down, gently. 5 photos spread across the table now. 5 impossible moments. A child in the backyard. Vesa, pregnant in the hallway. Kale and Lior on the pier. Vesa in the hospital, wrecked with grief. And Lior, 10 years old, sitting alone in the aftermath. Together, they tell a story, not the story she's been telling herself, but the truth. And the truth, Lior realizes, is this. She was loved. She is loved, even in her worst moments. Even when she couldn't love herself. Vesa knew what happened that day at the lake. Knew Lior had been there. Knew she'd been carrying that guilt alone. And Vesa had protected her anyway. Had lied for her. Had kept the camera as a witness, yes. But also as a promise. That one day, when Lior was ready, she could see the whole picture. And maybe, just maybe, forgive herself. Lior picks up the camera one last time. One exposure left. She walks downstairs, through the living room, past Vesa's empty chair, and out the back door into the garden. The air is cool and damp, thick with the smell of earth and wild roses. The garden has gone untamed in the months since Vesa's death. Flowers sprawling over their beds, herbs climbing the fence, weeds tangled with blooms in a mess that's somehow beautiful. Lior stands in the middle of it, surrounded by life that refuses to stop growing. She raises the camera and knows exactly what the last photo needs to be. The garden has gone wild. Lior stands in the doorway, barefoot on the threshold between the house and the yard, and stares at what Vesa left behind. Roses climb the back fence in tangled masses, their blooms heavy and fragrant, petals dropping to the grass below. Herbs have escaped their neat rows. Mint sprawling into the walkway, thyme creeping between the stones. Lavender grown tall, and woody and silver green in the fading light. Weeds and flowers twist together, inseparable, beautiful in a way that feels almost defiant. This is what happens when you stop trying to control things, Lior thinks. They grow anyway, wild and messy and alive. She steps into the grass. The earth is cool and damp beneath her feet, soft from days of rain. The air smells like soil and green things, and the faint sweetness of roses past their prime. Overhead, the sky has deepened to violet, streaked with the last traces of sunset. Orange and pink bleeding into blue. Lior walks slowly through the garden, the camera heavy in her hands. One exposure left. She stops in the center of the yard, surrounded by Vesa's untended plants, and raises the camera to her eye. Through the viewfinder she sees roses climbing, lavender bending in the breeze, shadows pooling beneath the fence, life continuing, indifferent to grief, stubborn in its refusal to stop. This is what memory actually looks like, she realizes. Not frozen, not fixed, not a single moment preserved in glass, but alive, changing, growing wild in the spaces you try to leave empty. Layer clicks the shutter. The photo ejects, warm and smooth, and she catches it carefully, holds it up to the dimming light, and watches it develop. This time, there's no waiting, no hours of suspense, no slow emergence of something impossible. The image appears almost immediately, sharp, clear, real. The garden, exactly as it is, twilight lit, wild, alive. No ghosts, no hidden past, no secrets pulled from decades ago, just now. Lear stares at the photo, her breath catching. For the first time since she found the camera, it's showing her the present. Not what was, not what's buried, but what is. And she understands. The camera has given her what she needed most. Not answers, not absolution, but permission. Permission to stop searching the past for something she can never change. Permission to be here, now, in this moment, in this body, in this life that keeps moving forward, whether she's ready or not. Lear lowers the photo, her hands steady for the first time in days. She walks to the garden bench, old wood, weathered gray, half hidden beneath a climbing rose, and sets the camera down gently. She doesn't pick it up again. The evening hums around her. Crickets begin their song, hesitant at first, then rising in overlapping waves. The wind moves through the leaves, soft and rhythmic, like breathing. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks. A car passes on the street beyond the house. The world is still here, still turning, still alive. Lear walks barefoot through the grass, feeling the blades cool and slightly damp against her skin. She kneels beside the lavender and runs her fingers over the stems, releasing the sharp, clean scent into the air. She touches the roses, careful of the thorns, and feels the velvet softness of the petals. She breathes deeply, in, out. Her lungs fill with the smell of earth and growing things. Her chest rises and falls, steady and sure. She's learning how to do this again, how to be present, how to exist in a moment without running from it or burying it, or pretending it isn't happening. It's harder than she thought it would be, but it's also simpler. Just breath, just grass, just the sound of evening settling over the garden like a blanket. Lyre stands and walks back to the house. She climbs the steps to the back porch and sits, her legs stretched out in front of her, the final photo resting in her lap. She looks at it again. The garden, wild and real, caught in the soft light of dusk. No tragedy, no revelation, just life continuing. And for the first time in as long as she can remember, Leor smiles. It's small, fragile, barely there, but it's real. She sits there for a long time, watching the light fade, watching the stars begin to appear, faint at first, then brighter, listening to the crickets and the wind and the quiet hum of the world refusing to stop. The camera sits on the bench, half hidden by roses. She doesn't go back for it. She doesn't need it anymore. The past has been developed. The images are complete. The story, messy and painful and unbearably human, has been told. And Lyre is still here, still breathing, still learning how to live with all of it. Eventually, she stands. Her body is stiff from sitting, her feet cold from the damp grass. She picks up the final photo and carries it inside, back to the kitchen where the other 5 are waiting. 6 photos. 6 moments. 6 pieces of a story she'd spent 30 years trying to forget. She spreads them across the table in a line. A child in the backyard. Vesa, pregnant, in the hallway. Kyle and Lior on the pier. Vesa in the hospital. Lior, alone, in the aftermath. And the garden, wild and present and alive. Together they tell the truth. Not the truth she wanted. Not the truth that makes her look good or erases her guilt or fixes everything that's broken. But the truth that's whole, light and shadow, joy and loss. The moment before and the moment after, and the long, difficult space in between where life actually happens. Lior touches each photo gently, one by one, her fingers tracing the edges. Then she gathers them carefully and places them in an envelope, seals it, writes on the front, in handwriting that looks nothing like Vesa's, but feels somehow connected to it. Muirwood. The whole story. She sets the envelope aside. And finally, for the first time since she arrived at this house 3 weeks ago, she feels like she can breathe all the way down. 1 week later, Lior locks the front door of Muirwood for the last time. The estate sale is scheduled for tomorrow. She's already packed what she's keeping. A few books, Vesa's journal, the envelope of photos. The rest will be sorted by strangers, priced and tagged and carried away to other homes, other lives. It's strange how quickly a house stops being yours. The key sits heavy in her palm. She turns it over once, twice, feeling the worn edges, the way her thumb fits naturally into the groove. Then she slips it into her pocket and walks to the car. The morning is cool and bright, the kind of light that feels like a promise, clear and soft and new. Birds call from the trees lining the driveway. The garden hums with life. Roses still climbing the fence, lavender swaying in the breeze. Lior pauses at the car door and looks back at the house. It looks smaller now, less haunted. Just a building with peeling paint and crooked shutters, sitting quiet in the morning sun. "Thank you, Mom," she whispers. The words feel inadequate, too small for everything Vesa gave her. But they're all she has, so she says them anyway. Lets them hang in the air for a moment before opening the car door and sliding into the driver's seat. The envelope of photos sits on the passenger seat. 6 moments. 6 pieces of truth. She's labeled it carefully. Muirwood, 2024. Mom, me, Kale. The whole story. Not to obsess over. No, not to carry like a wound. Just to remember. To keep the full picture, light and shadow together, instead of burying half of it and pretending the rest doesn't exist. Lior reaches for her seatbelt, then pauses. She looks up at the attic window. She'd gone back this morning, one last time, to leave the camera. The attic was cold and dim, the air still thick with dust. She'd climbed the stairs slowly, feeling the weight of the week settle over her shoulders. The wooden chest was still open, empty now except for the faded velvet lining. Lior had placed the camera on the windowsill where the first photo had developed, right where it all began. And she'd left a note beside it, written on the back of an old envelope, for whoever needs to see what they've been afraid to remember. She didn't know if anyone would find it, didn't know if the camera would work for someone else the way it worked for her. But it felt right, leaving it there, passing it on. The camera's work with her was done. Lior fastens her seatbelt and starts the engine. The car hums to life, steady and familiar. She adjusts the rearview mirror. Not to see Muirwood receding behind her, but to see the road ahead. Clear. Open. Waiting. Her eyes are clear. She puts the car in drive and pulls away from the house. In the rearview mirror, Muirwood grows smaller, softer. The garden blurs into green. The windows catch the sun and flash once, bright, before fading into the trees. And then it's gone. just a house, just a memory, just a place she used to know. Lior turns onto the main road, following the curve of the hill away from town. The radio crackles to life, static at first, then a melody. An old song, something soft and familiar, the kind Vesa used to hum while cooking dinner or folding laundry or tending the garden. Lior's breath catches, then she smiles and hums along. Her voice is quiet, uncertain at first, then steadier. The words come back to her slowly, pulled from some deep place she didn't know she still carried. She keeps driving. The road stretches ahead, empty and bright. The wind slips through the cracked window, cool against her face. Her hands rest easy on the steering wheel. The envelope of photos sits beside her, still and silent. She doesn't look at it. She doesn't need to. I used to think memory was something fixed, she thinks. A photograph, unchanging, trapped in time. But maybe it's more like film in a dark room. It needs time. It needs light. It needs you to stay long enough to see what emerges. And when it's finally clear, you don't have to carry it alone anymore. You just have to see it. All of it. And let it be done. The road crests a hill, and suddenly the world opens up. Fields stretch out on either side, green and golden in the morning sun. The sky is endless, pale blue and cloudless. The light spills across the windshield, warm and forgiving. Lior smiles, not the fragile, tentative smile from the garden. This one is steadier, surer, real. She keeps her eyes on the road ahead. The camera is behind her. The house is behind her. The past, all of it, the beautiful and the unbearable, is behind her. But she's carrying it differently now. Not like a weight, not like a secret she has to bury. Just like a story. Finished, complete, hers. She keeps driving. The radio plays softly. The wind moves through the open window. Her hands are steady on the wheel. And for the first time in 30 years, Lior isn't running. She's just moving forward. One breath, 1 mile, 1 moment at a time. The road unspools ahead of her, bright and open and alive, and she keeps going,